Jack's first time here, and the first Alejandro show here.
No, I've never seen it. Yeah. I'm a huge fan. I've never had the chance to see it. Definitely. Pretty good fan.
No, I was the other guy was about my playing. Last year.
Scott for having me again.
Yeah.
And they've always been the best of hosts, so thank you so much. I was telling Scott, this might be one of my top 5 favorite gigs in all of America. So what we're going to do tonight is a very, very rough sketch of something that I've been working on for a little while. It's a combination of the memoir that I'm working on that's on its way to be finished. It's almost there. It's been a struggle, but it's almost there. There's a lot of information to digest. These 50 years of rock and roll that I've been participating in.
Yeah.
And then also a theater piece that I'm working on with a theater company out of Calgary, Alberta. And it's going to result in like a one-man performance, you know, but something that's a little more staged than what you'll see tonight. And just really talking about, you know, my story and the 50 years of rock and roll that I've been involved in, and my family, how I got to this point, and we'll talk about a lot of stuff. If you want to ask me questions, you're welcome to, as long as they're not too personal. No, actually, you can ask me whatever you want. So let's just start at the beginning, which is with a band called the Nuns out of San Francisco, California. It's very nice of you to talk to the band, but obviously you never heard of us. We were horrible. And yet we had great pride in being as bad as we were. The Nuns began as nothing more than an accident, really. There's a lyric in a song called all I ever wanted was a 4-piece band. We're coming on strong just like an accident. And the Nuns began with a relationship that I had with a young man by the name of Jeff Molina. And he was from the Bronx. He was living in Huntington Beach, California, where I was living in the early 70s, you know. We became friends. He had a real taste for the Rolling Stones and Bob Dylan. And I love the New York Dolls, the Stooges, the MC5, Roxy Music, T-Rex, and David Bowie. Those were my bands, you know. Mott the Hoople, I should mention also. So we somehow found a common bond. We became friends, listening to records, talking about stuff, about his life in New York, which was always very exotic and attractive to me, you know, growing up in the Southwest and in California, on the beaches of California. New York was where I really wanted to go. It was my destination. So anyway, we became friends. He moved to San Francisco, California shortly after. He actually lived in Marin County in a little town called San Rafael. And there was they called it the Last Trash Dance. It was at the Hollywood Palladium. And it featured the Stooges with Ray Manzarek of the Doors, the GTOs, the Hollywood Stars, and the New York Dolls. It was the death of glitter, they called it. And I went to that show and really enjoyed myself. And it was like maybe a couple days later that my girlfriend and I decided to hitchhike to San Francisco. We did. So we went up to San Francisco, hung out with Jeff and his girlfriend. And we were both taking film classes. I really wanted to be a filmmaker. I was not playing guitar at this time. I wanted to be a filmmaker. I love the films of the French New Wave, the German New Wave, the Italian neorealism. I love John Huston and Sam Peckinpah especially. And I love the films of Ozu and Kurosawa. So that's what I wanted to do, was to be a filmmaker. And we were taking these film classes at a place called the College of Marin. And we decided for our film project, we would make a movie about the worst band in the world. And since we couldn't play, but we thought we looked so cool, we cast ourselves as the band in the movie. Now, I didn't even have a guitar. We rented a guitar from a guitar shop in San Rafael. which I'm ashamed to say we never took back. But we became this band, and we filmed one performance, which was at a club called the Lineage. And the Lineage was a bona fide music club where I saw Roy Buchanan, who you guys probably know from this area. And I saw Boss Skaggs, I saw all the great San Francisco bands, Bonnie Raitt there. I saw a band called Clover that ended up being Elvis Costello's backup band, a lot of the first of his records, you know. So they let us perform during the day when there was nobody there, and we filmed this performance, right? And we were so bad that our bass player, whose name was Nola, he always wore a leopard skin suit and leopard skin platform boots. He had curly hair, he kind of looked like Mark Bowen a little bit. Well, he was so ashamed of what was happening on stage that he just walked off the stage. All he saw was a cord from his amp off into the wings. But because of punk rock music kind of emerging at that time, they embraced us, and we suddenly had a place that we felt we belonged, you know, and so we became a band. We used to lock ourselves into these kind of storage units to practice, and we'd borrow every amp that we could borrow, turn them up as loud as we could, and make this horrible noise, and stay there we were kind of locked in, I remember, like all night long, you know. But there was a young lady who was performing with a band that did Doobie Brothers covers, and she was getting kind of tired of doing that, and she heard us play through the doors and knocked on the door one night I should say, and her name was Jennifer Moreau, and she was a keyboard player, and she was wonderful, and she became our Nico, basically. You know. She was very, very elegant. She would dress in beautiful, elegant clothes, and she was a beautiful woman, and she'd play piano, and she would come out and perform a song that she wrote called Lazy. I'm too lazy to fall in love, you know. I'd rather stay home and watch TV, she would say. And then we would come out, you know, looking like we came up off the streets, out of the gutters, you know, gutter snipes, really. And that was the Nuns, you know. Now, the Nuns became actually kind of a big deal in San Francisco. We became one of the biggest drawing bands in San Francisco at that time. And I remember that at first, though, we were hard-pressed to find a place to play. But Jeff, being from the Bronx, was very good. He had a silver tongue, and he could talk people into letting us play at these places that really didn't want us, you know. But one time he booked us into this club in Fisherman's Wharf. It was really like a restaurant bar that had a plate glass window in which the band performed inside the stage, which was up against the window in order to attract tourists into the club. It was owned by the mafia. Now, we only performed like half a song before a big burly mafioso pulled the plug on us, said, "Get the fuck out of here." So we put a little note on the door that read, "If you want to see the Nuns, we're at a rehearsal studio on Folsom Street." The only two people that showed up besides our girlfriends were Chip and Tony Kidman, who I eventually joined up, and we had a band called Rank and File.
Yeah.
So there we were, the Nuns, finding gigs. We talked this Filipino nightclub owner into letting us play. We became one of the first bands to play at that club that became the Mabuhay Gardens. It was the punk rock club in San Francisco. And we became, like I said, a kind of a big deal. We opened up for Brian Ferry at Winterland. That was amazing. And we also opened up for the last Sex Pistols show at Winterland, which was a big deal. Sid Vicious came to our house that night, and we spent the night drinking tea and eating crumpets all night. You know? And Sid took off in the morning, and we didn't see him until we went to New York City after that gig, the summer. The gig was in January, and I think it was in June that we finally went to New York. And we lived in the Chelsea Hotel.
Yeah. Wow.
It's 1978. Sid, one day, I remember, I came down into the lobby, and there was Sid Vicious with Nancy Spungen, Sherry Nolan of the New York Dolls, and Johnny Thunders of the New York Dolls. And Sid was very happy to see me because I think he believed I might have more crumpets for him. But he became my neighbor, you know, he was like down a couple floors, and I would see him all the time at Max's and different clubs that I was playing. I was playing with this wonderful artist by the name of Judy Nylon, and she had sung with Brian Eno and John Cale. So I was in her band, and it was a great band, and I loved playing with her, really. She showed me this world that I had only dreamt of, you know. We played the Kitchen, we played the Mud Club, Hurrahs, and all those great clubs at the time. So Max is awesome, you know. And I remember the first night we played Max's, it was the first time I played with her. We rehearsed one night in her hotel room. The next day we played a gig, and in the front row was Chris Spedding, Brian Eno, and John Cale. So it was really heady time for me. So there I was living in the Chelsea, and I remember one day I came out of the subway at 7th and 23rd, turned the corner, walked towards the Chelsea, and there was a large crowd of people in front of the doorway. And there was ambulances and cop cars. And I walked up to a friend and asked him what had happened. And he said, they say that Sid has killed Nancy. And just like in a movie, the doors swung open. Two burly New York City detectives escorted Sid into a car, and off he went to Rikers Island. Wow. I had been in their room 2 days prior to this. And I remember that on the dresser there was a big wad of money. There was a gold record, Sex Pistols gold record. They had just gotten a kitten, and the kitten was just playing around the room. Sid was in bed, quite a mess, and Nancy was trying to help him. There was really no helping Sid at that point. And there was also a drug dealer, the hotel drug dealer was in the room also. Those of us who lived in the hotel never believed that Sid was the one who committed that crime, but maybe the drug dealer might have had something to do with it. So, Sid, as I knew him, was really this kid, young boy, who loved rock and roll, but was pushed to the point to become a caricature of a punk rock drug addict. They pushed drugs on him, and they pushed that behavior on him. And it's what really killed him, I think, you know, in the end. You know, it's very kind of a sad story because it was a love story of sorts, even though it was as messy as it was, you know. So after that, we all moved out and we moved on. You know. I moved to 14th Street, East. It was 520 East 14th Street between Avenue A and B. My neighbors were like Lydia Lunch and Lester Bangs and people like that. And, you know, I was still living in New York and loving it, you know. So the first songs that I'm going to sing for you, electrically, are Nun Song, which is a story about the nuns. And I wrote these songs with Chuck Prophet. Yeah. And then the second song is Chelsea Hotel 78. And the third song I'll sing for you on this guitar is a song called Sacramento and Polk. And it's about, Sacramento and Polk is about how we lived in San Francisco. We lived in transient hotels, and we lived on the street. So, here we go. That's my story up to now. hush of a kiss feels like it's all over now. I never could jump from high enough. I never could jump from high enough. Third story jumping high enough. It's just a mess on Market Street. So, after the stint with Judy Nylon, after Sid was gone, and we had moved out, living on 14th Street, I got a call from a friend, Chip Kidman, who I mentioned earlier. He was in a band, punk rock band in California called the Dills. And he asked if I might want to reform a group that we had in San Francisco, which was just a fun band called Rank and File.
Yeah.
I said, sure. I have a little more guitar then. Oh, I know what it is, Brandon, sorry. You can put it back. I screwed it up. Technology is my enemy. That's cool. Thank you. Sorry. So there I was, San Francisco, living on 14th Street, and Chip asked if he might come out, and we formed Rank and File. We put out, feelers for a bass player and a drummer, and we ended up with a gentleman by the name of Barry Scratchy Myers on bass, who was from London, and he was the Clash DJ, when they toured. He was also in the movie Rude Boy, if any of you guys have ever seen that movie. And Kevin Foley, who was with the Judy Nylon group, became our drummer. We had a hard time kind of convincing people that combining the sounds of George Jones and the Clash was a good idea. So we decided that we'd go on tour, and we booked a tour that took us from New York City all the way to Vancouver, BC. It was a 7-week-long tour, but we only had 7 shows in those 7 weeks. We were the worst of bookers. And so we spent a lot of time on people's floors, and our drummer had, curiosity about other people's medicine cabinets all the time, so we were constantly being kicked out. But one of the places we played was Austin, Texas. And Austin in those days, it was, I guess, 1980. I remember because we left on the night that Ronald Reagan was elected president. And those were the good old days. It seems like nothing compared to what we're going through now. But anyway, left on that night with our tier support was $50, a bag of pot, and a roasted chicken, which did not make it to our first gig in Dayton, Ohio. But we were keen on spreading the word of this new kind of hybrid of music. And we really were one of the first bands. The only other band at the time was Jason and the Scorchers out of Nashville.
Yeah.
And they were doing a completely different thing than we were. Our sound was based on dub music, Waylon Jennings, and The Clash, It was interesting. But anyway, Austin, Texas at that time was still at the tail end of the progressive country music. So some of the greatest songwriters of all time were still living there. Townes Van Zandt, Guy Clark, Willie Nelson, Jimmy Dale Gilmore, Joe Ely, Pat Mears, Nancy Griffith. The first time I saw Lucinda, she was busking on the drag in front of the university. It was that kind of town, full of songs, stories. And it wasn't the kind of town that you could go and proclaim yourself a rock star. Because these people were really fucking good, They weren't into the posturing. They were into the actual art and, what should we call it? Just the art of writing songs, So we decided that we would finish the tour, and we hobbled back. We broke up on the way back to the and then decided that Tony, Chip's brother, and I, and Bobby, my girlfriend, and I would move to Austin, Texas. And we did that. And I moved next door to a gentleman by the name of Billy Smith was his name. Billy was in his late 70s, early 80s when I met him. He was my neighbor, next door neighbor. His wife was Moselle Smith. And they were out of Terrell, Texas. And he had been in a band called Prince Albert and the Sheiks. And they were contemporaries of Bob Wills, Texas Playboys. And if you check out any country music history book from that period of time, you'll find them in there. And so Billy had abundance of stories, right? And he would always kind of call me over to come and tell them. So I would hang out with him a lot, He was a funny cat in that he would always ask me to bring my Spanish guitar. I did not own a Spanish guitar, but he thought everything I touched was Spanish. So I said, okay, cool. It's a Spanish guitar if you want it to be. And he would tell me stories about how they used to tour, and they would tour in a sedan with a roof, a mattress tied to the roof of the car, equipment sticking out the trunk, and they would stuff themselves in this sedan. He said they would throw the mattress out underneath the stars when the weather permitted, and if not, they would find shelter in a barn or under a bridge or through the kindness of strangers, he said. He said they played for mostly food, beer, sometimes girls, and sometimes money, he said. And it sounded like a wonderful life to me. Here we are. And he was just a real character, Billy, He had a lot of tattoos. And he had a pinup girl right here on his forearm, whose name was Pearl, because Pearl was his favorite beer. We were always drinking Pearl. And Billy claimed that he could make Pearl dance by flexing his muscles. But at this stage in his life, Pearl was a very, very slow dancer. Hardly moved at all, actually. But I would say, yeah, she's a great dancer. And I don't know, I just really loved him because he really represented kind of a time that was passing us by, The time where people could really throw a mattress out underneath the stars and feel safe. The time where people played for the sheer beauty of playing music, not wanting to become pop stars, not wanting to become famous, not wanting to be hashtagged and what have you. So when he passed away, I wrote him a song called Five Hearts Breaking. And I'm going to begin this song with a little piece that I wrote for my friend Stephen Bruton, who produced my first 3 albums. Stephen was a wonderful guitar player from Fort Worth, Texas, who had played with Bonnie Raitt and Chris Christopherson for many years, and really was a true friend, I remember meeting Stephen. He used to run by my house on La Casa in Austin, South Austin. And he was a very handsome fellow, kind of like Sam Shepard, looked a lot like Sam Shepard. But he would run by, and he'd always be very outgoing, waving at me and saying, hey, and I was very kind of suspicious of him. He was too good looking, and I thought he was a narc. And he was always inviting me to his parties, and I'd go down and look at his house, and there was always like BMWs, vintage BMWs, and I could see some neon light through the window, and I thought, he's got to be a coke dealer. But he became a true friend of mine, and I really miss him. He passed away of cancer. And so here's these songs. First one's for Stephen, and the second one's for Billy. held his hands, looked him in the eye. She said, believe, believe in everything will be fine. Everything will be alright. There's a day you can bet on that. I heard her close the door. She ain't looking back. Twist of fate or a stroke of luck. Well, the answer's over there beyond the wishing well. Everything will be alright. Take the fire in your hands and place it at her feet. Walk upon the mountains and then you'll sail across the sea. Her eyes are taken from the stars above. Her voice is 5 hearts breaking. Her voice is 5 hearts breaking. Her voice is 5 hearts breaking. The skies are fire waiting to die, and his heart is empty as a dead man's eye. She held his hand, looked him in the eye. She said, believe, believe in everything will be fine. Oh. Everything will be alright. Everything will be alright. Everything will be alright. Everybody waves goodbye. Climb aboard the train. Turn and wave goodbye again. Some go north, some go south. Maybe east, some left out. train, never to wait by again. He went north, he went south, maybe east, some left out. Some are rich, some are poor, but everybody's got to wait. Sun's not brighter here, it only shines on golden hair. I went north, south, maybe east, some left out. Some are rich, some are poor, everybody's got to wait.
Yeah.
So that song was from an album called A Man Under the Influence.
Yeah.
It was around 1999, I believe that record came out. I had left a label called Rykodisc Records, which was a great label. And I enjoyed being on that label, but I didn't sell any records on that label. And so I was dismissed from that label. And I was kind of like in this period of not really knowing what I was going to do. And I met some people in Chicago, these young folks, young punk rock kids who loved what they called insurgent country. And the label was Bloodshot Records out of Chicago. And there was a lot of cool people on that label: Nico Case, Ryan Adams, John Langford, and Sally Timms. It was a cool label, so I joined up with them. And this record that I made for them was one of my favorite records I've ever made. I made it with Chris Stamey producing, and we did it at Mitch Easter's studio in, it's called the Fidelatorium in Cartersville, North Carolina, way out in the middle of nowhere. In fact, when we drove into town, the first thing we saw were two Mexican guys that were being held up against a car, a police car. So Hector and my drummer decided we weren't going to visit the downtown area. But we made a great record. It was really wonderful making the record. My band had been playing for a long time on the road, and we were tight, and I just had a great group of people making that record with me. So I toured quite extensively behind that record, like maybe 250 to 275 dates a year. And we were gone all the time, you know, on the road. And really enjoying the spoils of the road, you know, parties. And we were the band that would never leave the club, you know. We'd stay and sing for the waitresses and the bartenders afterwards and just have a great time. We always knew it was time to go home when we saw joggers run by the window. And that was us. You know, we were having a great time. But after all that touring, I came home and I felt terribly ill. I wasn't sure what was happening, but I was turning a very, very unnatural shade of yellow. So I went to doctors, and they really couldn't tell me what was happening. I remember going to an old Mexican doctor on the east side of Austin, who told me I was just getting old, he said. You're just getting old, which was not what I wanted to hear. And then I finally went to another doctor after a little bit of this, you know, and she told me, she says, I'm going to tell you what I tell my AIDS patients, and that's to go out and live the best life while you can. You know. And with that, I hit the couch, and I was depressed, because everything I read about this disease was that it was going to end in fatality, right? There was no cure, it was a chronic disease. And I just got more and more depressed until my friend came and told me, Stephen Bruton was, that came and said, we gotta get you off the couch. Gotta get you back on the road, you gotta start writing songs again. Play your guitar again. And I decided maybe that's a good idea. So I remember I was touring with Sunvolt. And I was pretty much just living on trail mix and apple juice. There weren't a lot of vegetarian restaurants, and that's what the last practitioner that I had told me that would help me. And then in 2003, when I was performing a play that was based on that last song, Wave, which was about my dad's journey from Saltillo. My dad was born in 1907. He lived to be 97 years old, but he crossed the border when he was 12 in search of his parents, you know, who had left him to be raised by his grandparents. But I'll tell you that story a little later. So I was doing this play that was based on that story, and we were in Tempe, Arizona, at the university there, performing this when I got very, 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 very sick. And and I must backtrack a little bit, you know. As we were starting to tour again with Sunvolt, I thought to myself, maybe if I have a glass of wine, smoke a joint, I'll feel better, you know. Maybe I'll find myself again somewhere in this glass of wine, you know. But one glass of wine turned into a couple glasses of wine, turned into a few glasses of wine, turned into a case of wine, turned into the party, started to roll again, and I was the ringmaster of that party, you know. And finally, in 2003, when I was performing this play, my body had had enough. And after the performance there in Tempe, I was taken to the emergency room because I passed out after the performance. And it was there that the doctor told me that I had varices in the esophagus, I had advanced cirrhosis of the liver, and bleeding abdomen. I was a mess. And that I would maybe live a year unless I got a liver transplant. Which, in afterthought, you know, they can't really tell you how long you're going to live. You know, it's up to you, I believe. You know, I'm sure there's health issues that prevent that, but in my case, I wasn't going to let it get me down. So I meditated out there in the desert for a while, went back to Austin, and they put me on a medication called interferon. Interferon was usually used for, at that time, for terminal cancer patients. And it was a medicine that kicked my ass. It really did. It was worse than the disease itself. And it was eating away at my bone marrow. So I only lasted like a couple of months on this medication and decided that it was best that I just not take anything. And then by chance, I met a beautiful group of monks, Tibetan monks, who directed me to a Tibetan doctor. And then I found, through them, I found the doctor that kept me alive, really. She kept me alive. I was doing the medicine Buddha practice, and she was feeding me herbs and precious pills, and kept me alive until 2014, when they finally came up with a combination of drugs that totally kicked the Hep C out of my system. And I no longer have Hep C. You know, I haven't had it since then. Thank you very much. And you know, a lot of you here probably, I would think, donated to the benefits that happened for me during that time when I was going through all of that. And I found that it was really the community and kind of this focus and belief in the love that I was getting from people. That was the best medicine I ever got. And so when I finally got rid of that, I started to perform again. And I had to make another record. And John Cale came to Austin to take part in a tribute to Sterling Morrison from the Velvet Underground. And he asked me to put together a group for him. So I got him a string section, the Tosca strings, and I put together a band. And he came and we had a great time during that performance. And while he was there, I asked him if he would produce my next record. And he said yes. I said, well, can we record at your house? Because I hear you have a studio at your home. He says, no, I got rid of the studio. And I asked why. And he said, because I hate musicians, he said. So with that, I knew I'd found the right producer. And we made a record called The Boxing Mirror. And you know, John, when I knew John in New York with Judy, he was a very imposing figure, you know. I don't know if you know much about John Cale, but if you should check him out because he's an amazing, incredible composer and musician. He came over on the Leonard Bernstein scholarship, was giving the mantle to the avant-garde scene in the United States by John Cage, and then went on to join the Velvet Underground on their best albums, in my opinion. So, you know, I was very, very happy, and he was a wonderful man. He really took care of me during that time. He had a lot of compassion for me. And he asked me to go deeper than I've ever gone, to sing strong and to sing for the future, he said. You know. And my father passed away during that time. It was a very difficult time. So he helped me regain my confidence in myself. And this is one of the songs I wrote for that record about that experience in Arizona. It's called Arizona. Have another drink on me. I've been empty since I've been empty since Arizona. I turned my back on me and I faced the face of who I thought I was. One kiss just led to another. One kiss just fades into lovers. Since Arizona, since Arizona, since Arizona. Come out here and we'll get even more intimate. Okay? How's it going? Are you guys okay?
Yeah!
I didn't mean to frighten you guys. You know.
You're one of our top 5 too.
Thank you. So, 2016. I made a record in Italy with a wonderful Italian band called Don Antonio. And it was an amazing record, an amazing experience. We were touring, you know, in the old days, when you toured Europe, there was usually a festival or some sort of large event that would pay for the whole band to fly over, you know. And now it's not like that, you know. You're lucky if they paid for one guy to come over, you know. And so I was given the choice of bands to play with since I couldn't take my band to Europe. And the choice was between 3 bands. 2 were English, kind of Americana bands, as they say, which is kind of funny. And the third was an Italian band. And they were amazing. I fell in love with them immediately. You know, they had a love for Nina Rota soundtrack music. They also, you know, Italian Sikh melody. You know, so it was really beautiful. And I just felt like not only were they great musicians, but I felt like the combination of my songs and that band was a good one. You know, so I sent them 32 songs to learn. It's a lot of songs. I flew over and met them at the airport for the first time, you know. And then immediately they took me to their little village in which they lived, which was called Modigliana. It's in the province of Romagna. And it's just really a small village, you know. And immediately we went to a restaurant to eat, as Italians are prone to do. We ate a lot, you know. And we got introduced to the whole community of musicians. It's strange that such a little place produced so many great musicians. They call it Motown.
Because of the food.
And we met everybody. We then went to their rehearsal studio and rehearsed that night, and they knew every song.
Wow.
Better than I knew the song. They really knew them. And they were such great players. So next day we rehearsed a full day. The next morning, following morning, We crammed ourselves with, my wife and I, with 5 burly Italian men into a van with all our equipment, and off we went for a 10-hour drive to Hamburg for our first gig. And I think we visited 10 different countries in that tour. It was like one after the other, you know. It was really like something like 32 shows in 35 days. It was a really whirlwind of an event. And played some great shows in London and Paris, and you know, it was Berlin, you know, it was amazing. We were on TV in London, it was a cool deal. I then returned to Texas and went back a couple months later to tour the south of Italy. And it was there that I got this idea. I had to come up with an idea for a record. And I came up with this idea of writing a record about 2 young boys. The reason I came up with the idea was because suddenly I felt like southern Italy was a lot like Mexico to me, you know. The food was spicier, the dialect was different. The desert met the ocean, you know. It was just reminded me so much of what I love about Mexico. And so I came up with this story about 2 young boys who leave their countries and come to America. One boy's name is Salvo, and he's from Puglia, southern Italy. The other boy's name is Diego, and he's from Saltillo in the state of Coahuila. They meet up while they're working at Salvo's uncle's Italian restaurant in Galveston, Texas. They're working in the kitchen. And the reason I chose Galveston as their destination is because it's the largest population of Italians in Texas. And they're working in the kitchen. Anybody who's ever worked in the kitchen knows what a tedious and horrible job it can be. And so, you know, you begin to just talk to your mates about whatever, right? Just to buy the time. And they start to talk about all the things they love about America, what they've come to America for, what they're in search of. Turns out that they love American punk rock, you know. And they love not just the Ramones and Patti Smith and all the great CBGB's bands and great bands on the West Coast, but they also know the history. They love the Shadows of Night, the Count Five, the Stooges, the MC5, all the great bands. They love the Beat Poets, and they love the films of Sam Peckinpah. And that's the America that they've dreamt up in their mind. What they find is a very different America, you know. Now, this was 2016 when I put this record out. And I got a lot of flack for putting the record out, you know. On Facebook, I was told to go back to Mexico, even though I was born in San Antonio. I was told to keep in my lane constantly. There was people walking out on our shows yelling 45 and whatnot, you know, and just yelling all kinds of weird stuff. And it was kind of strange, you know. And then, here we are, 2025, and the topic is hotter than it's ever been. So the purpose of writing these songs, I think, is like, you know, I'm an old person. I was born a long time ago, and I got to live through the 60s. And I saw some of the greatest music that was ever made in rock and roll. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, you know. And in those days, I know I sound like what do they call us, baby boomers, I guess. In those days, though, I remember that we thought that the power of literature and film, art, culture was going to change the world for a better place, in which we all recognized that we were all one, that we were all immigrants, that we were all needed to love each other, you know? And as hippie as that sounds, you know, I think that it's such a noble truth, you know? If there is really a noble truth. I'm not saying it for that reason, I'm just saying that, you know, like in these times, I'll tell you something. My friend and I, Brandon, who's doing sound, he's a wonderful musician himself. He deserves the applause if anything. But we listen listen to a lot of podcasts, you know, and he's turning me on to podcasts. And we're listening to a podcast on Mussolini. You know. And if you listen to this, it's so frightening because it's the exact playbook that's being played out right now. I mean, to the T.
Hopefully it'll end the same way.
I'm sorry?
Hopefully it'll end the same way with what they do.
No, it's crazy, how it's the same thing. And I think that complacency, you know, we look outside and everything looks fine, you know. We go to the ball game, we go to the football game, we go to the dance, we go see a band, and everything seems normal, but it's not normal. I travel with my passport, my birth certificate, and my marriage certificate now. I've never had to do that. I'm afraid to cross the border, you know, because, you know, it's weird. And so these songs, I think, you know, I remember listening to Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and Tom Rush and all those great protest singers, Phil Oakes, who was one of the greatest, you know, and how much it meant, you know, how much I learned from them. John Prine. I mean, wow. John Prine was such a true storyteller. You know, I got to know John, I got to tour with him, and I've never met a better human being, honestly. And he was so cool, I would tour with him, I toured like a whole summer with him. And he would come and watch my show every night from the wings, you know. And John did not do sound checks on Saturday, he took the day off. And so the band would let me play his guitar and sing his songs for sound check. What a thrill that was. And also he wasn't, Fiona, his wife, wouldn't allow him to eat cake, you know, for some medical reason, I'm sure. But he was always sneaking cake. I was walking to his dressing room, he was always eating cake. I was going to throw you under the bus, man. So at the end of the tour, I really wanted to give him something, you know. And in Switzerland, I had bought a pocket watch, like the railroad conductors wore. You know, it was a beautiful watch. And so I gave it to him as a gift. And he loved the watch, you know. And Fiona told him, oh, he loves that watch. You know. So every time I would see, I remember we took a break after I gave him the watch, and then we started the tour again. And every time I saw him, he'd go, hey, Alejandro, you know what time it is? And I go, no. And then he pulled out the pocket watch. But he never, like, ceased doing that joke over and over. It was so cool. And I remember the last time I saw John, we were in Melbourne, and he asked me to come up and sing Paradise with him. It was a great song. And Fiona said, you got to stand by the side of the stage and watch it. And that's when he was, I don't know if you guys saw his last tours, but he put the guitar on the ground. You remember that? And he'd dance around the guitar, this wild little dance. That night, he had the watch, and he was doing it like countdown. It was so cool. And then we talked about, Nancy and I were going to go visit them in Nashville and hang out with them and stay with them. And then both of us won an Icon Award, the Ibera Icon Award. And we were going to go to Radio City Music Hall and receive this award. We were going to play a song together and stuff. But then he was gone, you know. And I think during that time, it was COVID, of course, during the COVID era years. And that's the one that really took me down. It really did. You know, I just said, fuck this shit, man. You know, I can't take it. So John said really cool things about my songwriting. When I got an award in Austin, they asked different people to do a little kind of, what do you call it?
Testimonial.
Testimonial, thank you. You need to travel with me. Testimonial, and John did one for me that was so heartfelt and just so beautiful, you know. And then I got to play the memorial that we did for John at the Ryman Auditorium.
You opened up.
Yeah. And I was the first one up for that thing. I was so nervous. I never got to rehearse with the band. And they're making a film of that though, and it's really beautiful what I've seen of it. So anyway, I'm sorry I just got carried away with it. But anybody got any questions or anything? You're welcome to ask me questions. The other night in Boston, I went out into the audience to do what I'm doing here. And people started to ask me questions like about my dad and what my family and stuff. It was really cool. So if you think of anything.
What about that guitar?
I'm sorry?
What's the story about that guitar?
Oh, this guitar is a 1956 Gibson J45.
Yeah.
The Spanish guitar, right?
It is now. And I got this guitar. I remember I had friends in the Kansas City music. They were called Midwestern Musical Exchange or something. And these guys were great collectors, and they collect like Americana, you know, like beautiful. They all had like Airstreams from the 50s, you know, cars were just these cool 60s cars and stuff. And I used to play a guitar called an Alvarez. I was sponsored by Alvarez, and it was a fine guitar. It was great, you know. And then one day I walked into the shop and they said, "Here, we're going to let you play this real guitar." And I've had it ever since. It was in the 80s.
Yes.
So I've had it ever since. So I love this guitar. I've written so many songs with this guitar, you know. And that's the thing about guitars. You pick up a new guitar, it doesn't sound like this one. And this old man told us once that it's because there aren't many songs in the guitar yet.
There we
So
go.
there's a lot of songs in this guitar. This song I'm going to play for you now is one from that album, The Crossing. And it's a song in which the boys just going to write a love letter back to those back home. It's called Something Blue. Wind blew my friend away, he flew away yesterday. Woman lies, children die, they still won't feed the poor. Is there money to be made on the people's parade? There's some broken hearts outside the door. So I'll write something blue, a melody I'll play for you. And I'll sing, yes I'll sing something blue. You claim a victory like a hurricane memory. St. James is hanging in the breeze. We turn another cheek, velvet armor chic. We sing for the workers of tomorrow. So I'll write something blue, melody I'll play for you. And I'll sing, yes I'll sing something blue. Nobody wants you, something blue. Maybe they'll turn to something blue. Maybe they'll see what the people need today. Let everybody say, hey, hey. Another smoky rainy day, that car's blown away. Searching for love lost along the way. If this beginning has no end, let the one man band begin. There's always time to tell another story. So I'll write something blue, melody I'll play for you. And I'll sing, mentioned my family, when I was taking film classes, I had an instructor who really kind of drilled it into me that I should make movies about my family, because it's a universal theme that we all understand, the messiness of family, the beauty in family, the joy in family, the complicated things that come with families. And I come from a large family. I spoke of my father earlier. My father was a tall, strong man who looked beautiful in a suit, had a mustache. He was a great dancer, a great singer, thought of himself as a crooner. He sang with a mariachi band in the 30s. And when he was doing work camps, he sang in work camps. Played a little guitar, great dancer, as I said, and a great horseman too, a great billiard player. He had all these wonderful charms, but they led to 13 children, So my dad had 13 kids, and 8 of us became professional musicians, My older brothers are Pete and Coke Escovedo, who played with Cal Jader, Willie Bobo, Mondo Santa Maria, Cachao. They had a little band, a trio. My brother Phil, who I love so much, he was upright bass player, and he looked like Mingus, And he always reminded me of Mingus, and he was just the most loving person. And he and my 2 brothers, Pete and Coke and Phil, had a band called the Escovedo Brothers, and they played Latin jazz, And they really had a huge influence, so larger than I even knew, growing up as a teenager, loving rock and roll. I never thought that their music was something I related to, but I was in awe of them as these kind of charismatic figures, They were always in suits. I never saw them in jeans, hair perfect. They drive up in these 2, when they were playing up in Hollywood, they played supper clubs, right, that kind of thing. And they drive up in 2 kind of Cadillac convertibles with these women who look like Anne Margaret, And so I go, that's a pretty cool lifestyle. I'm digging that, but they really influenced me in a big way. And after their little band, Escovedo Brothers, they formed a big Chicano rock band. It was the 70s, called Azteca. 2 albums that they put out on CBS Records. And then they joined another little Chicano rock band called Santana, that you might have heard. And they joined that band, and my brother Pete was with Santana for quite a few years. My niece is Sheila E., who was a drummer with Prince. That impressed her, didn't it? Yeah, that's my family, My brother Javier had the first punk rock single on the West Coast with a band called the Zeros. Great band, they're still playing. Yeah, they're killing it now. And then my youngest brother Mario had a band also called the Dragons, and they were kind of like a Hanoi Rocks Ramones outfit. And they were my favorite of all the bands in the family. But, so my dad, with all these charms, all his talents, let's say, that he had, he loved to drink, my dad, He loved to party. And he would leave us sometimes for a week or 2 at a time. He'd be gone. And around 1957, I was 6 years old. My mother had had enough. And she hired a man to drive my mom and the kids and my grandmother, who I never understood why she was there. She was not nice to us. I think she was just there to cast spells or something. She was frightening. She was really frightening. I hated to go to her house. It was like a goth museum, It was crazy. Anyway, I hired this man to drive us, and my father got wind of this and showed up and said, "No one is driving my family to California but me." So they told us we were going on a vacation, pack lightly, And I have this stupid joke, I'll tell it anyway. Kids on the roof, some in the trunk, and some just ran behind the car all the way. And we lost some in Arizona. But we made it to California in 1957. It was amazing. It was incredible. You know, orchards of lemons and oranges and avocados and limes and flowers that ran up to the Pacific Ocean. The first time we saw the Pacific Ocean was after church on a Sunday. All dressed in Sunday church finest, right? Suit and tie. They wouldn't let us take our shoes off, you know, to walk in the sand on the beach, you know. But we were just so fascinated by the ocean, you know. And my grandmother, coming from church, had a veil, a black veil, black everything, you know. We looked like, I don't know, like a Fellini movie. Like something out of 8.5. And I think the surfers thought we were like a Chicano Adams family. It's crazy. But that was my family, you know. And so we're living in Orange, California. I don't know if you guys know California that well, but Orange is in the midst of Orange County. Orange County being one of the most conservative counties in America. One day my dad shook hands with a man, and we suddenly owned a home in California. We left everything behind in San Antonio. You know, we left the horse that I had, the dog that I had, pets, toys, clothes. We, most importantly, I think, what was really shocking and traumatic for us as kids was that we left our family behind. My mom came from a family of 12. So we had tons of cousins and aunts and uncles, and my uncle had a bakery down the road that my mom would send me to get fresh bread and tortillas and pan dulce and stuff. And suddenly that was all gone, and we were cast into this blonde, blue-eyed world where we suddenly weren't as welcome. San Antonio was 75% Mexican at that time. And suddenly I was called a lot of names I'd never been called before. Spick, wetback, beaner, you know. I didn't understand all this stuff, you know. I just wanted to be a kid like everybody else. And my parents, bless them for tried to integrate me into this new society by having me join the Cub Scouts. I was probably the most reluctant Cub Scout in history. But I joined up, right? I had my little uniform and scarf. I like the scarf. And I remember there was a play that they had me participate in at the elementary school. And the play called for an Indian. And guess who was cast as the Indian? And I had a little feather, you know, fringe outfit, and they asked me to take my shoes off and go out barefooted to this thing, right? And as innocent as it may sound to take your shoes off and go out there, it was weird because when I did take my shoes off, the kids started to say that my feet were dirty because they were brown, right? And I just wanted to escape this world. I really did. So I ran home. My parents were sitting there waiting for me to come out in this play, and I never came out. They found me at home because I just wanted to get away. But thankfully, they did not force me to keep going to Boy Scout meetings and stuff, Cub Scout or whatever it was, you know. But it was a strange world, you know. I fell in love with surfing, you know. I wanted to be a surfer, and I was a surfer. I was a good surfer. I surfed from the age of like 10, 11, till I was 24, almost every day, you know. And I loved this surfer by the name of David Nueva. You know, he was a beautiful surfer. He was like a rock star surfer. He had long hair, he was thin. All the girls loved him. You always saw him with 2 or 3 blonde girls, you know. I thought he was a rock star. And so, you know, as I'm surfing, it was weird because the surfers always clashed with the Mexican kids. They always fought, right? I was not a fighter. And I didn't want to join gangs. And I didn't want to fight with anyone, you know. I was more of a lover than a fighter, I guess. And so sometimes these surfers thought I was Hawaiian, you know. All my life I've been mistaken for so many different, you know, it was an identity crisis for sure, you know. And so sometimes I would be Hawaiian just to not get my ass kicked, you know, in these situations. So I tell Chuck Prophet these stories, and we wrote a song about it. It's called San Antonio Rim. And it's about going back to some place that was very, very comfortable one time and is no longer that place, you know. So, here we go. I know this is weird, you know, probably for you guys to hear me tell all these stories. I hope you know, you gotta write about what you know, right?
Right.
And this is what I know. This is my life. So here we go. It's called San Antonio Rim. The songs are good. Seems like everybody's trying to sell me something I don't need. Might be a half pound of cocaine, quarter gram of Mexican weed. But the last thing I need is something that'll dull my pain. I'd walk from here to San Antonio just to taste the cool tongue of the rain. But the rain ain't gonna come. The rain don't wanna come. Something strong. I think I felt enough of this. I asked the bartender for doubles. Bartender says I should quit. Once I could find a friendly face in every corner of this town. When you don't recognize a single soul, what's the use in hanging around? 'Cause the rain ain't gonna come. The rain don't wanna come. Rain ain't gonna come. The rain don't wanna come. No, 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 no. I put my finger to your pulse, you whispered something pretty in my ear. I just laid down to rest my eyes. When I woke up, there was nobody there. I hear the ocean calling, calling like a long lost friend. Think I'll go back to California, but I don't think they let me in. No, the rain ain't gonna come. The rain don't wanna come. Rain ain't gonna come. The rain don't wanna come. No, 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 no. but I don't think they let me in. Well, I think I'll finish up here. I'll do one more song for you guys. I want to thank you very much for your patience. And once again, give it up for Scott. And all of you for coming out. That's great. The next time I'll bring my trio, Scott Dan Baum, and
Yeah.
and we'll bring Mark Henny on drums. So this is the second to the last show on this tour. Brandon and I have been out for 3 weeks now, and we started a crazy gig. I first met Brandon in January. We did a fly-in to DC. I had taken this gig without thinking much about it, other than it was a lot of money, you know. And I needed the money, so I took the gig. And I'm like an idiot. I didn't really check out what I was getting myself into. And as it came closer to that time to play the show in DC, I realized it was on January 20th. Yeah, inauguration. And it was a agricultural ball, right? Yeah, agriculture ball. It was supposed to be bipartisan. First of all, even getting to the hotel, which was 9 miles from the airport, something like that, took over 3 hours to get there because there were so many barricades, military barricades and stuff. So we finally get to the hotel, and in the lobby are Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. I think Tucker Carlson was having a show from the bar, and in the room there's these things for Trump and stuff, so I go, fuck. And we went, I think it wasn't until the next morning we did sound check, right, Ren? Yeah, the next day we did sound check, yeah. We flew in that night, then the next day we played. And we went and did sound check, and it was a huge ballroom. And but we did sound check. It was great to meet Brandon, and you know, my band was there. Scott had just flown in from the Mexico City gig at Chasing Isbell and Centromatic, and he wasn't feeling well. So we were kind of a mess. And we did the sound check though. We thought, we can get through this, you know, we'll get through this. So we just kind of hid out in our rooms until we had to play, you know. We got dressed up and went to the ballroom when we were supposed to play. And it was so packed with so many people. And people wearing Trump glasses and Trump sparkly cowboy hats with Trump, and it was Trump, 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 right? And we go to our dressing room, and the guy who had booked us comes in, and his wife is wearing a sparkly cowboy hat with Trump glasses. So suddenly I realized it's not bipartisan, this thing. You know? And they had asked if I would allow a Mexicana Chicana from South Texas, Republican. You know, South Texas is full of Trumpers, Mexicans, Trumpers. You know? It's crazy. So they came, she came, I said no. When they asked, I said no, we don't need an introduction. But they had her on anyway, and she gave this speech for 15 minutes. Then we played, and like the first few songs were okay. It seemed like, yeah, we can get through this. People were kind of dancing. We're not really a dance band. You know? But we tried our best to be one. You know? And then in the middle of our set, they have another couple Republican people come and speak, and they cut off our set in the middle and totally broke all our rhythm, so that when we started up again, it was like someone had called in a bomb threat. There was really nobody there, you know, and nobody was dancing, and it was just creepy. I remember as I came just before we played, there was 2 cover bands that opened up for us. And when I got to the stage, I peeked through the curtains, and they were doing the worst version of Honky Tonk Women that I've ever heard in my life. With all these women in gowns and the cowboy hats and stuff, you know, trying to dance sexily. It was a mess. It was a nightmare. And then poor Brendan, took him like a day and a half to get home or something like that. You know, all the flights were messed up. So,
You're lucky Brandon's still with you out there.
so like, you know, I've learned a big lesson with us never to play DC again.
Tomorrow.
I'm playing tomorrow.
But it's a good spot.
Just
I
don't
just
say,
want-
let's go Brandon.
I just want to say that Brandon's been great the whole tour.
Yeah, man.
I mean, really, and you'll probably see him again. He works with big bands like the Mountain Goats and Danny Warhols and Black Pumas. You know, he's got a great resume. And we've had a wonderful time on this tour. Brandon and I, when we set out, didn't really know each other. We know each other pretty well now, and you know, this was all an experiment, really. You know, how to do this, and I don't usually play solo. I've always surrounded myself by as many musicians as I possibly could. But I've enjoyed being able to tell my story. I'm getting towards the end. After 50 years, I'm getting ready to, you know, put my feet up somewhere and just relax for a little while. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be immediately, but that's where I'm headed, you know. 50 years of being in a van, 50 years of being on planes and playing clubs. And, I've had a great life. I really have. And as I told you earlier, you know, probably the best part was that I've been able to meet some of my heroes. You know, I met David Bowie, I met Iggy Pop, I met Wayne Kramer, and I got to be friends with them, not just, you know, John Cale. Cale would always tell me, you gotta stop being a fanboy. You gotta think of yourself as a peer. And I just have never been able to handle myself. I always just really love these guys and adore them. So here we go. We'll give you one last song. I'm not gonna put the in-ears in again. I'm fine. I can hear it. Wasn't I always a friend to you? Wasn't I? Wait a minute, let me start that again. the master suite. I'll take the floor. You get your ass, don't worry about me. I'm gonna get it someday. Still be your lover, baby. Oh, 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 oh. Wasn't I always a friend to you? Wasn't I always a friend to you? Do you want to be my friend? 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 People say I'm the life of the party 'cause I tell a joke or two. Although I might be laughing loud and hearty, deep inside I'm blue. So take a good look at my face. You'll see my smile slip out of place. If you look closer, it's easy to trace the tracks of my tears. The tracks of my tears. Oh, 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 oh. 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 Thank you very much. Anything you guys want to do?
Slow down.
Rosalie!
It's off 2 a.m.
Slow down. Spanish.
It's off to me. Castanets.
Yeah. Well, it is off George Bush's icon, so.
Break this time.
Okay. Let me see. You know, I haven't done Pissed Off 2 a.m. in a long time. I'll try to remember it. It might be good. It might be a little shaky, but come on now. So Pissed Off 2 a.m. I was in a band called Buick McCain.
Yeah.
We thought we were the world's greatest rock and roll band. And it's funny because we were probably the most hated band in the history of Austin. And the only place we could really get a show was in Oxford, Mississippi, where they kind of thought we were like the Rolling Stones or something. You know? So the Buick was the kind of band that was really more of a party than a band, right? You know, we would drive without actually having any shows. We'd go out and just say, "Oh, Dash Rip Rock's playing in Arkansas. Let's go over there and ask if we can open up." You know? But we always had a gig in Oxford, you know? And we always used to play this place called The Hole in the Wall in Austin, Texas. You know? And so, you know that place? Yeah, it's a cool place. So this is about a guy that's kind of like in a band called Buick McCain, let's say. He's playing on Tuesday night, let's say, at the Hole in the Wall, where he had has a bar tab that's so high that it's going to take him a year of gigs to pay it off. And he finishes playing, and he goes home, and everyone's asleep, you know. And he looks a mess. His eyeliner is starting to run down his face. He's wearing pants that don't fit quite as well as they once did. They're held together now by duct tape and vice grips or whatever, you know. And he sits in the dark. He wants to listen to his favorite records, maybe a Stooges record, you know. And he's just kind of lamenting for those days when he was a younger man, I guess. But everyone's telling him at the house to shut the fuck up. So that's what it's about. It's not about me necessarily, but people who are kind of like me, I guess. Sometimes I come home, I don't expect too much. The lights are off now, it's only 2. How I wish my breath didn't hurt so much, and you'd be up, babe, it's only 2. It's only 2. It's only 2. It's only 2. Why don't you sleep? You look as though you need it. Barricades and reasons, they mean nothing. Now they mean nothing to me. Well, all my friends, they laugh at all my jokes. I've got one more story, it's only 2. How I wish my touch could erase the past, and you'd be up, babe, it's only 2. It's only 2. It's only 2. Why don't you drink? You look as though you need one. Barricade These were different times, and you'd be up, and we trade stories. It's only two. It's only two. It's only two. It's only two. Why don't we pretend it's all we have between us? The barricades and reasons, they mean nothing to me. Now, why don't you sleep? You look as though we needed barricades and reasons, they mean nothing to me. Now they mean nothing to me. Sha-la-la-la-la-la. Sha-la-la-la-la-la. Sha-la-la-la. Well, she plays as a nurse. She works without a net. I like her better when she walks away. Said she was mine, you know she told me twice. I like her better when she walks away. I like her better when she walks away. I like her better when she didn't say. I like her better when she dances. My way, come on. I like her better when she walks away. I love the sun when it silhouettes. I like her better when she walks away. I love her hair falling across my face. I like her better when she walks away. I like her, come on, better when she walks away. I like her better when she didn't say. I like her better when she dances. My way, come on. I like her better when she walks away. Plays customers, works without a net. I like her better when she walks away.
Walks away.